Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Li Xing Gan, Financial Market Strategist Consultant to Exness, and this is your market outlook for the 7th of February 2025. So for today, we will be taking a look at technical analysis on gold. We will take a look at key levels as well as potential scenarios. So I'm currently on the Exness web terminal, and this is gold on the 4 hours time frame. Right, so we'll start from the higher time frame first. Right, on the weekly, you can see that prices are still in an uptrend. We are seeing higher swings being formed here, right? So this move, you can see the higher swings just marking out the most recent price movements. Prices are still continuing to form that higher lows and higher highs. We're not seeing any shift in structure on the weekly time frame. It's also interesting to note that we have this potential ascending channel that prices are testing. You can see that the ascending channel came over, and if I were to just extend this slightly to the left, you can see that this channel over here, right? So for channel to be valid, we need price to tap the bottom of the channel twice. So we have once here, second time here, as well as the upper bound of the channel 2 times, right? So just based on the weekly, we can see that there is still some limited upside before price reaches the upper bound of this ascending channel on the weekly time frame. It's interesting to note that price did consolidate around this area for a while, right, before we see that move to the upside. And it's this area of consolidation, if we take a look at what we have on the left, right, ties in with this idea of that fair value gap. So the fair value gap is basically a gap that is between 3 consecutive candles, and the wick of the first candle doesn't overlap with the wick of the third candle, right? So you can see this area over here, which price came and pushed into this zone. Let me just adjust this. Right, so you can see this over here. This is that fair value gap. Okay, so we have this zone, right, the price tap into, and if I were to just zoom in slightly, you can see that gap between this region. Right, it's also interesting to note that another thing to consider, it's that area of consolidation. You can see that this was 3 dojis that were being formed, right? And it's on the weekly time frame, which means that for 3 weeks, prices has just been hovering around this zone. So about the 2,500 level before we saw a strong break, right? And sustained buying to pressure or push prices higher. So price following that, right? Following the retracement, tap in before it continues on this uptrend. So that's on the weekly time frame. Again, one other thing we could potentially look at on the weekly is to project using our Fibonacci extension, right? If there are any levels that align with the upper bound of the ascending channel. So for Fibonacci extension, I'm trying to find zigzag patterns that price might push into, and you can see that this would be a potential zigzag pattern to consider, right? So once we have identified the zigzag pattern, what we want to do is to use the tools that we have to project the extension level, right? So once I've identified the zigzag pattern, I just want to move along with the turning points of the zigzag pattern to project the Fibonacci extension levels. So common ones that I use would be the 78.6, 100, as well as 61.8. So for this scenario, you can see that price actually pushed up to the 61.8 extension, but slightly higher, right? This for me would be an interesting point just because it is near that ascending channel's upper bound that we have here. Right, now, of course, beyond that, the 100% Fibonacci extension. Now, what the 100% Fibonacci extension means is that the extent of this rally that we have observed back from the start of June 2024 all the way to October, right, this few months that we've observed over here, right, if we're to project it from November onwards, right, the extent of the move that we observe are similar. So that's what the 100% Fibonacci extension means. So this area, right, the 2,900 level, this would be a potential resistance over here. Right, so if price continues to sustain that rally, we could see potential for that move, right? It's really more of a zone, right? So 2,900, this region over here. Let me just adjust this slightly, and we have that. Okay, so we have this 2,900 level, this region over here. So 2,900, 2,950, this zone, right? I would pick the 2,950 in this case since it is nearer to that upper bound as well as 78% Fibonacci extension. Right, so it's the zone, and of course beyond that, right, the 3,000 level, this would align with the 100% Fibonacci extension. Okay, of course these are just theoretical, or not theoretical rather, right? These are round numbers, right? So if price does push into this zone, what I would like to observe over here, right? So 3050, this region, right? This zone over here, right? So rather what I would like to observe is that you can see that when price starts pushing into this resistance levels, on the lower time frames, you would see that sustained uptrend. So higher lows, higher highs being formed. So once again, if I want to see any reversal below these levels, I'm waiting for that consolidation on the lower time frame and a potential shift in market structure. So on the weekly time frame, these are the key levels, right, of for resistance. In terms of support level, you can see that this was a resistance level that failed previously. There was also a doji that was formed before we saw this like pullback, right, pushing back into that demand zone that we have in gray here. So you can see that this, it's a potential area which used to be a resistance before price hesitated, broke above it, right? So this could serve as a potential area of support on the weekly time frame. So these are the key levels, right? So for this area, you can see that this region would be at about the 2780 level or 2800 level, right? So the 2800 will be slightly higher, right? This zone will be about the 2780 region here. It's really again more of a zone than a specific level. You can see that this was also an area where or rather the zone was formed, right, from that doji that we had earlier. So if you move to the daily time frame, you can see that on the daily, we're still seeing that bullish momentum coming through, just in forms of higher lows and higher highs. You see that even if in this successive candles, you know, each candle just closing above the other, right? So the uptrend is still in place. We don't have much on the daily. You can see that with this most recent move, we hardly experienced any retracement of any sort, right? Just once over here where we saw that break to the upside above the last high, and following that price did a slight pullback, tested demand and continued higher. And so that's what we have on the daily time frame. If we were to narrow it down, you can see that the daily also has some kind of ascending channel that prices are testing, right? Maybe not the best, more of an ascending trend line, I suppose, than a channel. This area here, right? A relatively narrow one, right? But you can see that just with the most recent price movement, prices are still in this bullish structure. We're seeing that pairing of recent gains over here, but nothing to indicate any shift in market structure or shift in trend. Right, if we take a look at it on the 4 hours time frame, on the 4 hours, you can see that, as we've mentioned earlier, we saw that retreat slightly in prices. We have this region over here that price tested. You can once again see that the ascending trend line, price just retreated slightly below the upper bound of this 4 hours ascending trend line, this region over here, right? So we have a support level, and this area, which was also the previous area of consolidation over here before we saw that strong break to the upside, this could serve as the first support zone on the 4 hours time frame. Right, so now that we have all these higher time frames in mind, right, let's just highlight the key levels on the 4 hours. Right, so potentially this could be a first support level, this area over here. This is also an area where we saw that period of consolidation, so about 2820 level. This region over here, you can see that period of consolidation before a strong break to the upside. One other thing I would like to do with this is to see if there are any Fibonacci retracements that line up with this zone. Right, so you can see that for Fibonacci retracement, we're trying to identify strong moves to the upside. So this is a move to the upside and a potential retracement. And once we've identified that move to the upside, we want to take the lowest point and the highest point of the most immediate move and try and find if there are any retracement levels that line up with this. Right, it's worth noting that for Fibonacci retracements, we're trying to find if there are levels that line up with the zone, but we are trying to identify first just based on graphical levels, right? Key support resistance levels based on price action. Fibonacci retracement alone doesn't work if you're just using it in isolation, right? So for example, in this case, you can see that the 50% Fibonacci retracement, this area over here, right, would coincide with the zone that we observe for the support level at 2820. Right, so again, I just want to highlight this. So this 50% Fibonacci retracement, right? In fact, it's exactly at, or rather at above this area of consolidation before we see the strong move to the upside. Okay, so there's a 50% retracement that aligns with this zone that we have. Right, let me just remove that background. There we go. Okay, so we have that 50% retracement that lines up with this zone. Another retracement level that we can also take would be this move here, right? So this area, again, we're trying to see if there are any Fibonacci confluence levels that could potentially line up here. We want to take from the lowest to highest point, and you can see the 38.2%, the one that's marked in orange, right? It's also closely residing near this region. So those are the two levels right now that we have them here. So this is the 2820, which could serve as the first support, and of course beyond that, if price breaks below this shorter term or 4 hours time frame ascending channel, we could see potential for a retest of this horizontal resistance and resistance turn support zone. You can see that it was a previous resistance that price failed before a strong pushback into the zone, and price continued higher. So this is another region, right, which is the 2780 area. It was also the weekly demand area that we've highlighted, this zone over here, right? So this would be the first support and the second support, right? We have the higher time frames resistance, but if you're on the 4 hours time frame, you want to be slightly more conservative, right? Given that this is the region, so if we do see a potential pullback, of course the first resistance would be the one that we saw that recent move or that recent retracement, right? So 2880 level, this zone, right, where we saw that move. And of course, if price breaks above that ascending channel and out of this ascending channel's upper bound, we could see potential for a further move up to the 2950 resistance. This will align with the level that we saw on the weekly time frame, right? So the weekly, this is the upper bound of that larger ascending channel that we observe, right, on the weekly. So this area here, you can see that this area, which was also the 78.6 Fibonacci extension. So this is the technical analysis on gold. I hope that this is helpful just in terms of highlighting the thought process behind how we combine the or identify key levels across different time frames. Right, so one thing to note is that if prices are still in an uptrend, you can see that this higher lows and higher highs, right, this whole bullish market structure that's being formed, what happens is that if price pushes into a resistance level, right, as with all the resistance in an uptrend, we could see that this resistance levels could be challenged, right, or even swept before price did a slight retreat. So if we are taking any potential retracements, you want to ensure that there is a very clear shift in market structure coming into a key resistance area. Right, so currently for me on the 4 hours time frame, right, if price continues to hold above this ascending or this consolidation area, which is also the ascending channel upper bound, right, at 2820 support level, we could see potential for a rebound, right, and also challenge this high that we have here. At least on the 4 hours time frame, we're not seeing any clear shift in market structure to indicate that, you know, the uptrend has potentially end, right? So if we do see a rebound above this, right, we could see that slight move up here. Right? But of course, to keep in mind that we are also not seeing just a technical perspective, we do have fundamental factors that are coming in as well. Gold itself is a safe haven, right? So amid all this uncertainty, we could see demand, right, or safe haven flow that's pushing gold prices higher. But also to keep in mind that prices are elevated, right? We are seeing a very strong rally, right, pushing into this zone. So prices are near, or rather at an all-time high. So this is where we also need to consider risk factors. Okay, so this is what we have in terms of gold's technical analysis for today, right? Thanks everyone, and I'll catch you guys again in the next session.